Have you ever trusted the meals you eat daily, not realizing one of them might be slowly blocking your blood flow? I know a man named Walter. He's 75, lives in Ohio, and just had brain surgery yesterday. He's not a rare case, though. He's retired, plays cards on Thursdays, and never smoked a day. But something caught up with him, and it wasn't just age. What landed him in that hospital bed wasn't an accident or some rare condition. It was the food he ate every single day. Not the fast food or sugary snacks we think about when we imagine poor diets. It was the everyday, ordinary food we all have in our homes. The food we trust without giving it a second thought. And that's where the problem lies. Last week, when I saw him, he said something that stuck with me. I thought I was doing everything right, but what clogged my arteries wasn't one big mistake. It was 5 small habits I never questioned. In this video, I'll tell you about Walter's story and the 5 foods he wishes he'd stopped eating years ago. You'll see how they impacted his arteries, his brain, and his overall health. And you might realize how common these risks are for older adults who are simply trying to eat normally. Stay with me until the end. These lessons might help you avoid surgery, keep your energy levels high, and preserve your independence. Sometimes, the most life-changing realizations come from the little things we overlook. Let's dive in. First up, processed meats. Walter used to have ham or bacon with breakfast nearly every morning. Sometimes it was deli turkey on a sandwich, or a few slices of sausage for dinner. It all felt normal to him, nothing too extreme, just the kind of food that many older men eat to keep things simple and familiar. But over time, those small servings started to add up. Doctors found a significant plaque buildup in his arteries, and they weren't shocked when they learned what he'd been eating. Processed meats are loaded with saturated fats and preservatives, like sodium nitrate. These chemicals can damage the inner lining of your blood vessels, which makes it easier for cholesterol and calcium to stick and harden. That's how plaque forms, and in Walter's case, it was a dangerous buildup. At first, he didn't notice anything. A little fatigue after climbing stairs. Then came the occasional lightheadedness. But by then, the real damage was already done beneath the surface. That's the issue with foods like these. They don't hit you all at once. They wear you down slowly. The worst part? These meats are often marketed as convenient and protein-packed. That's what Walter believed. But the convenience came with a price. The salt content alone is enough to raise blood pressure, which increases the pressure on your arteries. Over time, that pressure weakens the walls of your arteries, making them more vulnerable to rupture or blockage. And we can't forget about inflammation. The constant flow of chemicals from these meats, especially nitrates, can spark chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is one of the main causes of heart disease and stroke, especially in older adults. Walter said if he could go back, he would never have been so casual about those meats. If I had known, he said, I would have thought twice before making bacon a daily habit. He's right. The small choices we make each morning can affect our health for years to come. If you're regularly eating these meats, it might be time to take a step back and think it through. You don't have to quit them all at once, but cutting back could give your arteries some much-needed relief, and your brain will thank you down the road. Second, baked goods and packaged pastries. Walter had a sweet tooth. Nothing extreme, just a muffin in the morning or a store-bought cookie in the evening. Occasionally, it was a slice of banana bread from his neighbor or one of those snack cakes from the checkout aisle. He wasn't overeating. It was just a way to find comfort, especially after his wife passed away a few years ago. Those little treats gave him a sense of routine. But what Walter didn't realize is that many of these baked goods are loaded with refined sugars and, even worse, trans fats. These fats aren't always listed clearly on the label. They hide behind terms like partially hydrogenated oils. While they make pastries flaky and help them stay fresh longer, they also do major damage to your heart and arteries. Trans fats are known to raise LDL, the bad cholesterol, and lower HDL, the good cholesterol. This combination is dangerous. Over time, this imbalance increases the risk of plaque buildup, narrowing your arteries, and disrupting the blood flow to your brain. That's exactly what happened to Walter. He didn't feel any pain, no major warning signs. But inside, the inflammation was building, and his arteries were stiffening. It wasn't just the fats. The refined sugars in these pastries cause your blood sugar to spike quickly, only to drop just as fast. This roller coaster effect damages the lining of your blood vessels and contributes to insulin resistance. For older adults whose bodies are already less efficient at processing sugar, this becomes a bigger issue. Walter told me he used to think, it's just a small pastry. What harm can it do? But when you eat them every day, or even a few times a week, the damage adds up. It's not about guilt, it's about awareness. These foods don't just affect your waistline, they affect your circulation, your memory, your energy, your entire quality of life. And here's something most people overlook. Many of these pastries are labeled as low fat or made with whole grains, but they still contain additives, stabilizers, and sugar substitutes that can confuse your metabolism and trigger inflammation. Walter didn't know this. Most people don't, but now he does. He started making small changes. He switched to fresh fruit, a small handful of walnuts, or plain Greek yogurt when he craves something sweet. He says it took a few weeks to adjust, but now he doesn't even miss the old treats. More importantly, he feels clearer, lighter, his blood pressure has gone down, and he no longer has those dizzy spells in the morning. Now number 3, flavored coffee creamers. Walter never skipped his morning coffee. He called it his start button. But what he didn't think twice about was the flavored creamer he added to every cup. French vanilla on Monday, hazelnut on Tuesday, a little sweetness, a little creaminess. It seemed harmless enough. Over time, it became a habit he didn't even notice. But here's the problem. Those flavored creamers, especially the non-dairy ones, are packed with artificial ingredients, hydrogenated oils, corn syrup solids, and chemical stabilizers. They're made to taste rich and smooth while lasting forever on the shelf. But the body doesn't process them like real food. In fact, some of those oils act just like trans fats once they're inside your body, even if the label says 0 grams. That's because small amounts can be rounded down, and those small amounts add up quickly when you're using the product every day. Walter told me he used to pour generously. No measuring, just until the coffee looked right. What he didn't realize was that with every cup he was adding compounds that quietly raised bad cholesterol, lowered good cholesterol, and fueled chronic inflammation in his blood vessels. It wasn't the coffee that was the problem. It was the creamer. And that inflammation? It's one of the biggest risk factors for heart disease and stroke. It weakens the arterial walls over time and makes the inner lining more susceptible to damage. Once that lining is compromised, plaque finds it easier to stick. That's how the narrowing begins. That's how the pressure builds. And in Walter's case, it ended in the kind of emergency no one expects. What's tricky is that many older adults use flavored creamers, thinking they're avoiding real sugar or heavy cream. But in doing so, they trade one problem for another. The artificial sweeteners and oils in these creamers may keep calories low, but they confuse your metabolism and can spike insulin, especially with regular consumption. For seniors, that spike is harder to control and more damaging to the body long term. Walter didn't believe it at first. It's just a coffee creamer, he said. How bad could it be? But once he switched to real milk and started reading ingredient labels more carefully, things changed. His blood pressure improved. The tightness in his chest eased. And for the first time in years, he felt like his energy wasn't dropping off before noon. Number 4, packaged soups and instant noodles. Walter always called soup his comfort food. When he didn't feel like cooking, or when the weather turned cold, he'd heat up a can of chicken noodle soup, or pour boiling water over a cup of instant ramen. Quick, easy, familiar, that's what made it appealing. He thought it was better than greasy takeout or skipping dinner altogether. But what Walter didn't realize, and what many older adults don't foresee, is just how much sodium is packed into those convenient meals. Some of those cans and noodle cups contain more than half of the recommended daily salt intake in a single serving, and that's assuming you stop at one serving. Most people don't. Over time, all that salt adds up. It raises your blood pressure steadily, tightening your blood vessels and putting more strain on your heart with every passing year. And when your arteries are already aging, already less flexible than they used to be, that added pressure accelerates wear and tear. That's what happened to Walter. His arteries weren't just clogged, they were stiff, overworked, and fragile. By the afternoon, he'd feel a dull pressure in his head. He thought it was just aging, but scans showed something different. The high-sodium diet had pushed his blood pressure into dangerous territory. The walls of his arteries had thinned in some areas and thickened in others, trying to compensate. That's what led to his emergency, and it could have been prevented. Sodium isn't the only issue with these foods. Many packaged soups and noodles contain additives, artificial flavors, and preservatives, all designed to mimic real ingredients while keeping costs low. These chemicals can mess with your nervous system and interfere with kidney function, especially in older adults whose kidneys are already working less efficiently. That stress seeps into your circulatory system, putting even more pressure on your arteries. Walter admitted he never thought to check the sodium content. "I just looked at calories," he told me. "I didn't realize my heart didn't care about calories as much as it cared about salt." That realization hit him hard. He thought he was making a healthier choice. He thought soup was safe. Now he's made a change. When he wants something warm and easy, he uses low-sodium broth, adds fresh or frozen vegetables, and spices it up with herbs for flavor. It takes a bit more time than opening a can, but the difference in how he feels is worth it. No more pressure in his head by mid-afternoon, no more tingling in his arms, and most importantly, no more trips to the emergency room. Number 5. Sugary breakfast cereals. Walter never skipped breakfast. He believed in starting the day with something quick, easy, and sweet. Most mornings that meant a bowl of cereal with a splash of milk. Sometimes it was a box labeled whole grain. Other times it had pictures of fruit on the front or claims like heart healthy in big letters. He thought he was making a smart choice. But most of those cereals were packed with added sugar, much more than he realized. Even the ones that didn't taste overly sweet often had 5, 10, or sometimes even 15 grams of sugar per serving. And let's face it, no one stops at just one serving. He didn't. Most people don't. That sugar rush in the morning might give you a quick burst of energy, but it comes at a cost. It causes your blood sugar to spike rapidly, then crash just as fast. That spike damages the inner lining of your blood vessels, especially in your brain, where blood flow is more delicate. Over time, these daily sugar spikes can lead to chronic inflammation, making your arteries more prone to narrowing and blockage. Walter never suspected cereal could be a problem. "It's breakfast," he said. "How bad can it be?" But it wasn't just the sugar. The refined grains in many cereals break down quickly, flooding your bloodstream with glucose, which puts stress on your pancreas and insulin response. For older adults, that constant strain on the metabolism becomes harder to handle, and when the body can't keep up, inflammation sets in. Arteries stiffen, plaque builds up, and small clots are more likely to form. The doctors explained that the damage wasn't just in his heart or legs. It had reached the arteries in his brain, the ones that matter most when it comes to memory, balance, and focus. Walter had started to notice little things slipping away, forgetting names, losing his train of thought in the middle of a sentence, standing up too fast, and feeling lightheaded. He thought it was just part of aging, but in reality, it was a slow suffocation of oxygen and nutrients to his brain caused by arteries that were too clogged to do their job. "No one tells you cereal could do this," he said. But when he took a closer look, he saw the truth. The ingredients weren't there to nourish him. They were there to sell a sense of health, not deliver it. That's when he decided to change. Now Walter starts his day differently. Sometimes it's oatmeal with cinnamon and nuts. Other times it's scrambled eggs with spinach or plain yogurt with berries. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be real. And the difference in his energy, his mood, and his focus is night and day. No more mid-morning crashes. No more brain fog. No more shaky hands when lunch is delayed. And the best part? He feels like himself again, like his brain woke up with him instead of lagging behind hours later. Final thoughts. Walter's story isn't unique, but it is a wake-up call. A man who never smoked, rarely drank, and thought he was doing everything right ended up needing brain surgery because of the foods he trusted the most. Not because he overrated or lived recklessly, but because no one ever told him how certain everyday foods can quietly wear down the body over time. What stood out to you the most in this video? Was it the coffee creamer you add each morning without thinking? The soup that feels like comfort but hides dangerous amounts of salt? Or maybe the cereal you've always thought was a healthy start? These aren't just food choices. They're long-term habits that shape how we age, how we think, and how we live. If you saw yourself in any part of Walter's routine, don't feel ashamed, feel informed. Take that knowledge and use it to make one small change today. Because when it comes to your arteries, your brain, and your future, even the smallest shift can mean everything. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't try to fix everything at once. Walter didn't. He started with breakfast. Then he changed how he shopped for soup. Over time, those small changes added up. His energy came back. His blood pressure came down. The fog in his mind started to lift. Now he's focused not on being perfect, but on being aware. And that awareness has given him something more powerful than any quick fix: control over how he ages, and peace of mind, knowing he's no longer working against his own body without realizing it. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments motivates us and keeps us going. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us keep creating content that informs and inspires. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.